What's up, founders and friends? Welcome back to another episode of Never Too Early. I'm Lauren Ibsen, talent partner at Decibel. And today we are going to be covering the top 5 commonly asked questions that I get from founders enabling their organizations with AI for the very first time. So with that being said, I could not be more excited to welcome my guest, Hamal Shah, product leader over at OpenAI, prior ran product at Atlassian, and before that, chief product officer at Root. Aside from all of those things, he happens to be one of the smartest, coolest, most wonderful people that I have ever met, and he did not pay me to say that. So I would love to welcome Hamal to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh my God, thanks for being here. I'm super excited about it. We have scheduled this 8 different times and we made it.
Well, just as long as it happens, it still counts. So it's fine.
100%. So I am super excited to be chatting with you today about all things AI productivity. I can't really think of anyone better to chat with me about this topic. So thanks for hopping on.
But they're unavailable. So you know what? Here we are.
Yeah, you're right. You're the only one wide open to do it. So this is perfect. Thanks for filling in today.
Happy to be here. Happy to get my call when I get it.
Okay, I love it. Cool. Well, I think we should jump into it. We've got a lot to cover. So let's start with the first question. I guess I'd love to hear from you what you feel people are missing when they say AI is a productivity tool. So let's start there.
Yeah. I think there are 2 key ways I think about kind of AI and like features in companies. There's like what it does to ICs and then just kind of what it means for the organization in general. So I think a lot of people talk about AI as just like productivity tools. And obviously that's true, but that framing feels like very, very, very small. And I think what I see is that AI is just like making individuals like dramatically more capable. But it's always funny, like every time I open up Twitter or X or whatever we call it nowadays, there's always that meme that's like, everybody's more productive, but like the company itself isn't moving faster.
Yeah.
And I think there's like an interesting paradigm as to why, because it's like oftentimes as individuals become more faster, it actually often exposes where the company itself is quite slow. Mm-hmm. So there's always something interesting to look at as individuals become faster. It's how is AI actually showing where companies themselves are still actually are not optimized for speed.
Yeah.
And secondly, I think something very near and dear to your heart is it very much exposes like how we should think about like people and talent and how we build teams. There's always this like term of talent density, I think, over the past decade that's really emerged. And I think that used to mean like hiring people. But now I think in an AI first world inside of companies, what this really means is how do you actually make sure not only do you have exceptional people, but you actually have exceptional systems for those people? Because the org chart is no longer just about humans anymore. It's about humans and agents and the rules that we put to govern them. Because I think as execution gets cheaper, these bottlenecks move. So it's no longer about can you get something done? It's that coordination, that trust, that alignment across the team. So I think that AI is really just actually reframing the question. It's no longer like, how can we make people faster? It's I think the best companies I think are asking themselves questions like, how do we design systems internally where if we put more intelligence, people or human, that actually translates into like better coordinated action and outcomes for our customers.
100%. Love it. I want to dive deeper into talent density because obviously, yes, that is something that's near and dear to my heart. And it's something that's coming up a lot across the portfolio. Like, how do we hire the right people and optimize their skill set in a way that allows them to be 5x what they would typically be? Let's talk about that a little bit. I want to just kind of dive into like, how does AI change talent across the board in your opinion? I obviously have perspectives on this as well, but I'd love to hear from you on more of the product side and someone that's kind of come up more product and edge oriented. Like, how do you think that this is going to shift how people think about building out their technical teams?
When I think about building teams today, fundamentally, it still comes down to the same principle about getting great people. So if you have that, like that's the right like question to ask. Is like, do I have the right people? That's like the first entry point. But then I think we're asking ourselves like a second question is like, if I get great people and I have great people, is the company that I'm building or the systems that I'm building like multiplying their like their strongest qualities or like trapping them and actually not bringing them the best out? Because I still think fundamentally Your strongest performers are always going to get frustrated and then lose time by the same things: context switching, chasing approvals, rewriting the same Slack message 6 times in 6 different places, and stitching together information across different things. But we have to remember now that our org charts can now evolve. So it's no longer just like what humans can you employ, it's what humans and agents in the team can get there. So I think some tangible things that will hopefully shift in companies will mean that you have less people in the company who should be playing roles or have skill sets that are like status coordinators, or they're very good at pulling together these like updates and making sure that, you know, everybody is staying aligned. Or people who are good at being like human routers between teams. I've always heard people describe themselves as that. So basically, you know, removing less of the need for people whose primary jobs or skill sets are formatting and information transferring. And instead, I think when I try to listen for talent skill set now, it's really testing out, are these like super high agency people? Will they go and figure out, hey, this is actually slowing me down? And I will operate with extremely high agency to go and figure out how do I remove those barriers, not only for myself, but for the entire company. I think system thinkers as well are becoming much more valuable because yes, you can have extreme depth in something, but the more that you can actually see the entire totality of what you're building, and again, what is actually slowing you down and what is actually good for your customer, is super valuable. And then, of course, there's the ever popular things again. The zeitgeist of Twitter right now is talking about, hey, in an AI first world, always having strong judgment, strong taste, people who can still take very ambiguous things into structured execution. Those are really valuable. Like one thing that has stood out to me at OpenAI is when we look at hiring even PMs and product managers, the skill set that is like the most non-negotiable is very much around product sense. Because in a world where you can build anything, right? Just being able to have extremely high craft at what is the thing that we need to build is still like an evergreen. So I think when it comes to building teams, yes, you still care about great people, but when you're hiring great people and you have great people, do you have the right environment that's actually going to give them the chance to be successful and bring out their best? That's the question I really hope people are asking themselves as much as they're looking at, do we have the right LinkedIn profiles in the hopper?
Yeah, for sure. I think that makes a ton of sense. I'm curious, and this is just kind of a tangent, but I mean, working at a place like OpenAI or working at a place like Anthropic right now is so hot, obviously. And I think so many people would die for a job at one of those companies. If you were to give some advice to a PM to try and get them to stand out or be special in the crowd, like what advice might you give them so that they feel like they're able to come with the right skills or come with the right kind of strategic thinking in order to try and like step out in front of the rest of the crowd?
You know, I think that's a great one. I think when I when I have conversations that are just even casual for people, forget even the interviews for a second. And,
Yeah.
you know, the conversations that usually like trigger something in my mind of, wow, this person would be phenomenal to work with is, again, they have extremely high agency. So when they talk about things that they're doing, um, they talk less about the like systems and the org and the things that they're doing that you can't really measure. They're just like,
Right.
look, here's the outcome that I drove. And I was able to kind of push through this, and this, and here are the changes that I made. And yeah, I kind of maybe made some people wrong, but like I just like helped them see the new ways of working and why that really mattered. I hear that a lot, and I just hear people who are just like, I'm just relentlessly pursuing something. And I think that's like really critical because these companies move so fast, and if you try to wait for somebody to hand you something or give you organizational and strategic clarity, you're just going to get washed away with the tide. And so when I hear people who are really just like barreling down and driving, that's already the first successful thing. And practicing that is easy to say, but it's very, very difficult to do in current roles. The second are that they're just good builders. And that doesn't mean just like they're good at using the tools, they understand the tools. So they actually keep up with changes that are happening at the model layer. And they know what that means for the type of work that they can now hand off to systems. They deeply understand changes, for example, skills. And they say, how do I take more of my work and translate them into skills? And how do I take those skills and bring them across my entire organization? Because my team actually is now the bottleneck. It's no longer me. And so I think if you can master the art of those two things, being high agency and being somebody who does, because they also deeply understand what can and can't be done better now, I think that you're in like a very good place to be at like Frontier Labs.
Cool. I love it. Awesome.
Yeah.
I I know you touched on this a little bit, but I want to take it a level deeper. So, because this is something that I think a lot of people are thinking about right now and not exactly sure like how to actually implement it more tactically. So, talk to me a little bit about what it actually means to be thinking about your org chart now, not only being humans, but also including agents.
Yeah. It's been a crazy shift as we think about this because I think if we looked at the progression over like the last maybe 24 months,
Mm-hmm.
we're like leaving this era very quickly where AI was just like a smart text box. And now I think we're very quickly entering this era where AI is like the actual true workflow participant that
Mm-hmm.
we've all talked about, right? So, we first said, hey, this is really good at answering questions for me, maybe helping me draft some things as it kind of had some context in my work. And then it was like, it can kind of participate in the workflow where it's like, okay, I can hand off this specific piece. And now you can coordinate kind of end to end workflows pretty easily inside of those things. So, um, I think I think when you fundamentally look at humans and agents and how they work together, like the more delegation of execution that you can hand off and the more automation that happens, like work just continues to always get pushed up the stack. So like I think great leaders are kind of thinking about which work should be agent owned, what work should be human owned, like when should reviews happen, what gets automated versus what gets escalated, what gets
Mm-hmm.
measured and like logged. So very concretely, like if I think about my work every day to day perspective,
Yeah.
I say to myself, hey, like what should the team be focused on when I write like my Monday morning Slack message?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, here's like the focus for the week. Here's what we're going to do. Um, if I'm pulling like all the like, hey, here's all the stuff that we did from Slack, and if I look at like linear and some of the GitHub commit, and then like translating that relative to like what we said we were going to do in our roadmap,
Mm-hmm.
that's like no longer work that I should be taking on. And instead, I should be looking at, hey, are we actually like making the right like velocity week over week to like deliver on the things that we need to? Are we still prioritizing and focusing on the right things? If I look at the feedback that's come back in from users like recently, that again, I have an agent that will now pull in. Are we prioritizing the right set of features to go and address that, or do we need to go back to that?
Yeah.
One way to actually kind of test this out is just like if you're like a manager or a leader, like take a real problem for a week and just give it to somebody with high agency on your team, and then ask them after the week, like, hey, what kind of progress did you make?
Huh.
And see what
Yeah.
they said. Like, do they say that they came back and they were spending time like really making sure that we were focused on building the right thing and really being critical and trying to talk to as many people as possible? Or do they come back and say, I was still trying to piece together information, figure out who had contacts, figure out how to pull these things together. Now I'm going to actually have like something that I can go and review. If it's
Mm.
the former, you're in a good place. If it's the latter, you're really not thinking about how you can set up your humans to be taking advantage of AI and agents.
That's really cool. I like that. That's a really good way to think about it. Have you been doing that within your
I've
own
been
team?
I've been trying to. So ironically, I just switched teams internally. So I was leading all of ChatGPT for work, like the business and the enterprise stuff, and I recently switched over to work on OpenAI for science. And it's been really compelling because I've been trying to say, great, like I'm onboarding to a new team. What can be agent first about the way that we work? And some of the things that I love, the guy who runs the OpenAI for Science team, Kevin Wheel, he basically came and he said, "Hey, like we're not a team that's going to do these like meetings for alignment and stuff like that." He's like, "If you have an idea, put it in code. Like let's actually play with this thing to see how it feels and how it works." When I think about like doing research now, so I was just interviewing a bunch of our users yesterday. Great.
Yeah.
I just sit there in a call, like just like this. I get my interview transcript after with all the notes. I put it into my user research agent and I say, like, hey, I want you to summarize the key themes. But importantly, like if you look through Slack, if you look through our roadmap, what are some of the key questions that we might be answering or trying to answer right now? And can you take these interview notes and either substantiate those claims or give me the next set of questions I need to be asking about as either follow ups or
Mm-hmm.
to the next set of users I interview? And it is just like kind of blown my mind if I just contrast where I was spending time before as to now, because I feel
Oh,
like I
for
can
sure.
move a lot faster.
Yeah. Super, super cool. I I think one thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit with you is the most surprising shift that you've been seeing in terms of who can build now. And you can take this in whatever direction you think makes the most sense, but I think it's a big question. And I'm curious your initial thoughts and what you think has been most surprising to date.
Um, it is like, what a time to be a builder.
Mm-hmm.
Because, the like instruction tax between going from like PM to being an engineer and vice versa is like starting to really get collapsed, I think, a lot more. And so with the incredible advancements in our models and things like codex, or if you're using Claude, whatever it means, like it's no longer that everybody is like necessarily becoming an engineer. It's just that everybody can become that builder and like regress into engineering first principles. Like, what problem are we solving? What are the constraints to this problem? Like, what trade-offs do we deem as as acceptable? And I think about teams of the future. You don't need to have these massive teams anymore. It just always comes
Yeah.
back to, do you have the systems that help you build, ship, and move very fast? Where you should be moving fast. And again, make sure you have the right friction in place too.
Yeah. Yeah. Moving along a little bit, I want to talk about this is something you and I have touched on a little bit in the past, but talk to me a little bit about what you think the new scarcity in an AI first world inside of companies is.
One of the questions I was always getting asked when I was running the WorkZone houses, we'd have all of our, amazing businesses and companies that we work with. And
Mm-hmm.
they always say, like, tell me what's the future of AI? Like, where is this thing all going? Like, what should I be thinking about? Like, man, if I could answer that question, I'd have a different job. Um, and so I generally think really good product builders are like historians. Like, they
Mm-hmm.
can just study the past and understand, okay, like, what about the past is going to be repeated in history? What should I choose to take and what should I choose to ignore? When we think about like what is like scarcity inside of a company, is like the biggest productivity shifts always reveal like the current bottleneck of the company, right? Like, that's what I was saying. Like, individuals might be faster, but companies still move slow. And so to me, I think the biggest bottleneck is like alignment, like of people actually can say, I can build this thing very quickly. The decision to go and ship it still took 2 weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm doing a bunch of work. Oh, I didn't know that you were doing the same exact thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that companies need to figure out how to do. And I look at companies like OpenAI, which has a very unique org design, right? Like we just talked about, one of those things,
Right.
but it tries to stay as flat as possible. And I
Yeah.
think that one of the biggest reasons why companies that stay flat as possible, I think like Jensen's very famous for this, is because they can remove the number of people who will be slowing down things from getting out in a world where individuals are that much faster. And so, does this mean you have to have a flat org structure? I don't know. There's many different ways to approach the problem, but I would look at, again, give somebody really smart, go try AI tools, figure out why you couldn't get something done, and ask them why not. Just chip away at those.
And then talk to me a little bit about workflows internally that you think that companies should be redesigning first.
Yeah. Let's do the table stakes ones. And I think these are good table stakes because I think these are all the paper cuts that like get memed about working on, like you're working at a big company. Um, Weekly status reports. I don't know
Yeah.
what weekly status reports there are. Like, they've been memed obviously since like Office Space, right? Which we've ever
Yeah.
seen. If you were writing those internally yourselves, like if you were spending any time writing it, not just like tweaking and then posting or sharing,
Yeah.
um, that's like the first thing just to go and do tomorrow. Like, practically go get connectors, write a skill, have it learn how to do it, ship it.
Yeah.
Same with things like meetings. Um, make sure that you are collecting meeting notes. Like, I always, we have a great builder internally. She's really strong. She always talked about meetings as spoken tokens. But I didn't
Mm.
understand what that meant until after. I was like, oh, wow, that's like so true. Like, these are
Yeah.
very, very content rich sources of information. Now you can have something that can actually process them and look back at them very quickly. So like, user interviews are for me, again, very, very deeply engaged in actually like hearing what this person is saying. And now I'm like, oh yeah, take that note down
Right.
around it. So anytime you have meetings, like capturing those like logs and treating all of these decisions as like systems of records that people can go back to. We have like a lot of things internally, like workflows, like for example, pulling together FAQs or sales enablement, things like that are all good. But also even just things of like pulling together decision logs or things for like incident reports. Anytime I think anything is around just like synthesis or updates, those are like the first places I go and say, if you want to go and show how AI can actually meaningfully improve your company, not just make this email sound less passive aggressive, like start with those workflows. Because once you remove text out of the system, people start to get more excited, can actually start to move more free. They focus on the work that they love to do every day. Like it just becomes that much more enjoyable.
Cool. Awesome. Okay. Final question for you.
Yeah.
What should leaders measure if they want to know whether AI is actually changing their company?
Yeah, that's the big one. Mostly because we spend so much money, we're thinking about like, all right, how do I get people more token budgets and things like that. I think that there's probably like levels of this. We're like level 1 right now. A lot of people look at it just like weekly active usage, right? So I just like said, hey, even internally, we look at how many people are like leveraging our agentic tools to actually drive their work forward. So some people look at like how many users there are. Some people look at like, token consumption, which I don't love for many reasons, or like how many prompts are somebody sharing? I don't know, like, or how many people inside the company have a license. They feel so rudimentary to me. It doesn't feel right. I think we try to, I think, measure different things. For example, like even on our team, like how fast can we go from concept to prototype, right? How fast do we go from talking about this idea to actually having it shipped in front of users? What percentage of like the things that we're spending, our time on, for example, like updates and synthesis, are automated? Are we spending our time doing that? And I think if you start to actually also do that and then measure very specific workflows in your business. So I saw companies who are saying, hey, the first thing we're going to try to go do is to like automate everything in the SDLC, which is like pulling in context or being able to pull in like the incident reports, or being able to pull in all the bugs and just say, can we just push them through Codex, see what comes out? Like how much of a backlog are we really maintaining? Why are we doing that anymore? So being vertical specific or being hyper problem specific is another one that I think is great to manage, rather than just the basics of weekly active usage.
Cool. I love it. This was awesome. I can't thank you enough for your insights. I disagree with you. I do think that you are the best person to have answered all these questions.
I appreciate it.
You were an awesome fill-in, so thank you.
That's it. I just want to be known as the best Kevin guy like in second string. Come on. I'll put that on my LinkedIn. Please endorse me.
We love that. Keeps us having a chip on our shoulder, I'm the same way.
Drives us all. It's great.
I can't thank you enough. This was awesome. And thank you all for tuning in to Never Too Early. More to come soon. Thanks.